Welcome to Metuchen, New Jersey. In the foreground you can see the Pennsylvania Railroad Station on Main Street and Woodbridge Avenue, and in the background you can see the Presbyterian Church. Now there's the railroad bridge going over Main Street. Looks a little different now. Now we're looking east on Amboy Avenue around 1906. The house on the left has been replaced by condos, sad to say, and the street, of course, has been paved. Now we're looking at Main Street, Metuchen, which does look a lot different today. Now we had trolley cars in Metuchen around 1897, and you can see the tracks on the road there. Now this is Main Street, Metuchen, about 1920. Those cars look great to me, and I'm sure a few of you would like to have one now. Now we're looking at Main Street between Charles Street and East Walnut. Looks like we had some bikers in town. Now this is Metuchen Main Street about 1950. Those are good-looking cars too. So some things get a little bit better as we go along. Now this is our first mystery. Where is this? None of us know, or maybe one of you would. If you do, call us. Now this is Route 27 looking west from Main Street, and there's the old Metuchen Methodist Church on the corner, which has undergone some changes and has now disappeared. Now, that's the first change it's undergone. It became the Venture Theater, and I'm sure many of you would remember that. Now, this is Danford's Corner, and that still looks pretty much the same. It's Main Street and Middlesex Avenue where Danford's is located. This is yet another view of Danford's Corner, with kind of heavy pedestrian traffic there, if you'll notice. And this is Clarkson's store, which is next to Danford's on Middlesex Avenue, opposite Borough Hall. That's undergone some changes in the ensuing years. This building once housed the Grimstead Ice House, and next to it is the old Firehouse, which is now an antique shop, if you recall. This is a horse-drawn ice wagon. Those are the good old days. This is the site of the first railroad station in Metuchen, located at Lake Avenue. It was demolished in 1888. Some people in Metuchen wanted to preserve it, but the railroad people thought differently and brought in a locomotive, hooked a chain to the corner of the building, and tore it down. This is our present railroad station, located on Woodbridge Avenue. This is the railroad station at Oak Tree Road, which is located between Harding and Woodland. It's the site of the Van Cortlandt Farm. Here is Robbins Hall, which in 1900 held the first council meeting in Metuchen. That little balcony over the front door is where politicians, I am told, used to stand and talk to the people. Looks like a few of them are down there now waiting. This is another view of Robbins Hall. And this is how it looks today as Metuchen Hardware. These saddlebags were Metuchen's first mail bags. They were given to a local boy at Campbell's Tavern by the post rider when they grew too old to be used for carrying mail. In the early days, mail was left at public places such as taverns, not a bad idea, for the people to pick up. This is a U.S. post office wagon, a postal wagon rather, and the horse's name was Dandy. This is one of the first post offices located on Main Street. This is a rural free delivery wagon and the drivers around 1909 in front of the post office. Metuchen Post Office from 1921 to 1939 on Penn Avenue. I think it's the site of where the taxi station is now. This is the new post office is at its present location on Main Street. Needs a little bit of landscaping, but still a nice looking building. We've got the landscaping and it looks very good, even some business there. This is the old Franklin Schoolhouse, which is now the Borough Improvement League building. The BIL building was one space Middlesex Avenue, was turned around so an addition could be built. Franklin School, built in 1872 at Center Street and Middlesex Avenue. This was used until 1908 when the first part of the present Franklin School was built. The building was then moved to New and Pearl Streets where it was used as a dwelling until it was demolished in the 1950s. This is the same building with staircases on both sides of the entrance. The present Franklin School pictured here was built in 1908. It was also the Metuchen High School until it burned down and the students had to leave to go to Perth Amboy for the rest of their education. That was in 1957. This is the Oak Tree School, which we sincerely hope had a small enrollment from the look of it. This is Edgar School on Brunswick Avenue in Metuchen. The school has a boys' entrance and a girls' entrance. St. Francis School on Main Street and Library Place. Moss School, which had formerly been the Washington School, but was renamed for Mildred Moss, who was the principal. The Campbell School on Durham Avenue. This property was donated by the Campbell family, built with the understanding it would always be used as a school and a playground. The Clara Barton School on Amboy Avenue, now used as a senior citizens residence with offices. The present owner, John Goulia, once attended this school. Metuchen High School on Grove Avenue. This is another view of the high school, which is certainly a beautiful school. The Eyre Allen House on Durham Avenue. It's registered on the list of historical homes. The present owner, Mrs. King, claims to have been visited by the ghost of a Revolutionary soldier. The Bloomfield Manor on Amboy Avenue. This is located in the Clara Barton section and was built in 1810. The land was bought from Indians by the Bloomfield family in 1639. This is an aerial view of Bloomfield Manor taken in the 1940s. Amboy Avenue is in the front and Woodbridge Avenue in the upper left-hand corner. The Wright Robbins Estate on 105 acres, bounded by Woodbridge Avenue and Amboy Avenue, Simpson Street north and Halls Road to the south. Pictures taken before 1888. Roselawn, the palatial home of Walter R. Williams, located on Park Avenue, Metuchen-Edison. The home, unfortunately, has been demolished. Rustic Willows, 367 Middlesex Avenue, once occupied by Mrs. Clarkson. William Mook Residence on Walnut Place, so called because of the many walnut trees, which is now Library Place. It was demolished, and the convent is now on this site. The Charles Mook House on Amboy Avenue. The Stagecoach House on Middlesex Avenue, moved to East Chestnut Street between Linden and Oak on the north side. This is another side of the Stagecoach House. It looks like a totally different house. The Edgar House on Middlesex Avenue near Grove was built around 1900. Major Commons House on Linden Avenue. Major Commons' grandfather's house in Menlo Park. It was called Menlo Hall. The Molyneux House on Carlton Road. The Van Sickle House, northeast corner of Main Street and Amboy Avenue. The Shoemaker's House on Home Street. It was moved from Amboy Avenue and was built at the turn of the century. The Ross House on Hofer Court was built in 1760. The house was turned at a 90-degree angle in 1941 to face Chestnut. It has 12 rooms and 5 fireplaces. This is the barn that's adjacent to the Ross property. This old house was located on Route 27, Lincoln Highway, Edison. It's across from Menlo Hall. Presently, McDonald's is located adjacent to this property. Mr. Horace Boyd's childhood home on Vineyard Road in Edison. The old Grimstead home on Old Post Road in Bonhamtown. This was built in 1795. This is Washington Place in Metuchen. It's the home of Franklin W. Buchanan, the borough engineer for many years. This is the Religious Education House on Main Street in Library Place. Presently, the Bishop's home. This is the Terwilliger House, Middlesex Avenue, and that may be Ruth Terwilliger sitting on the front doorstep. Now, these are some examples of homes. This is 15 James Street in Metuchen. .312 Amboy Avenue, Metuchen. This is 56 Clive Street, that was the home of Franklin and Dolly Buchanan. .76 Clyde Street, the childhood home of Dolly Buchanan. Judge Prickett, her father, was shot and killed here by a disgruntled citizen. .92 Clive Street, a beautiful renovation done by Bill and Sue Kears. .68 Graham Avenue. This is the early Metuchen Library that was located on Hillside Avenue and we moved to Washington Place, where it is now a residence. Robinson Building on the south side of Graham Avenue, now Amboy Avenue, about 1900. Ramble Inn, owned by the Litterset family on Middlesex Avenue. The site is now occupied by a bank. An interior shot of the Ramble Inn. Certainly looks charming. Elizabeth Mook Craig as a baby. It appears that the Presbyterian church is in the background, and this may be taken from Amboy Avenue side. Daniels Hill, which is Hillside Avenue in Metuchen. This is at Daniels Hill Toboggan Slide. The site is now gone and is Rayleigh Court. Tommy's Pond on Lake Avenue. This is Tommy's Pond with a view of the Reformed Church on your right. A different view of Tommy's Pond showing some of the homes on Spring Street. the early Presbyterian church located on Woodbridge Avenue. This is how it looks today. The Old Baptist Church, which is located on Clinton and Carlton Place, now used by an Indian congregation. The Second Baptist Church, Durham Avenue, Metuchen. The Old Reformed Church, Graham Avenue and Amboy Avenue. Same church demolished by a fire around 1949. The Old St. Francis Church, which burned down. A lot of trouble in Metuchen with burning churches. The present St. Francis Cathedral on Elm Street in Metuchen. St. Luke's Church on the corner of Oak and Middlesex Avenue. Joyce Kilmer was married here. This is the Forum Theatre yesterday. And this is the Forum Theatre today. Here is the picture of the lobby downstairs. And here is the upstairs lobby. This is the inside of the theater facing the rear. And this is the stage of the Forum Theatre. Borough Hall, which is certainly a beautiful building, on the corner of Middlesex and Main. The Borough Garage. The Borough Pool. This is the ball field at Oakland and Grove Avenue. And the playground at Edgar School. This is Old Memorial Park. Certainly beautiful now. This is the YMCA building on High Street. A 4th of July parade on Main Street. Metuchen High School football team with the principal, Mr. Van Kirk. Metuchen 8th grade class of 1912. The Metuchen Clubhouse on Highland Avenue was burned down in the 1890s. The Metuchen Club, which is now the Masonic Hall. This is the Minuet, danced by the Quiet Hour Club in 1911. And And here are the boys setting the bowling pins in the Masonic bowling alley building. A scene from the blizzard of 1888 that is. This shows you the depth of the snow as they were digging out the cars. The old Colonial Cemetery on Main Street. This is a Mundy headstone in the old Colonial Cemetery. On the wall of our post office hangs this Liberty plaque with the names of Revolutionary soldiers from Metuchen. The American Legion building on the corner of Lake Avenue and New Street. Here's an old hand-pumped fire engine which came from New York City around 1900. Here's a parade where the firemen are pulling the hand-pumped engine. Here are the firemen in front of the old Eagle Hook and Ladder Company. Was on Main Street down near Penn Avenue. The driver is Leb Morris. Around 1900 this was taken, and the post office is at the left. The Firemen's Fife and Drum Corps at Franklin School. And here's our modern fire engine. Thomas Alva Edison. With, it appears, one of his inventions. Another view of Thomas Alva Edison. This is Mrs. Thomas Alva Edison with her child. Notice the absolutely beautiful dress on the child. This is a rear view of Thomas Edison's office building in Menlo Park, taken around 1910. Edison's Laboratory, Menlo Park. Edison's home. That's another view of Edison's home. This is the Thornall House, opposite the old Menlo Park Railroad Station. Was one of the first houses to be lighted by Edison's new invention. This is Edison's laboratory and his workers. A car on the left and the first electric locomotive chassis, minus the motor, used by Edison at Menlo Park. copper mine at Mine Gully, Menlo Park, opened by Edison when he had his laboratory there. The entrance to the copper mine tunnel. One winter, a number of years ago, 125 snakes were found in the shaft. Ugh. Edison Tower on Christie Street. Some of the memorabilia found in Edison Tower. The Tunaville of Metuchen. The trolley ran through Metuchen from Amboy Avenue, where it connected with the line from Perth Amboy to New Brunswick, to Bennon's Corner, now Crystal Street. The last run of the trolley was in August 1922. The people of Metuchen liked the trolley and didn't mind poking fun at it. This little jingle expresses one sentiment: ride, shine, pay your fine when you're riding on the dummy line. Which brings us to the train and the wreck we had on Main Street in 1977. In Edison, we had the Jackson Tap-In Tavern at Bonhamtown on the Old Post Road, now Woodbridge Avenue, next to Main Street. It was about 1740. It was located next to Old Beau's Den, and which is now the present Victorian Manor. Eggert's Mill, Bonhamtown. It's about 1890. The old swimming hole at Dismal Brook, in back of Woodbrook Farms, about 2 miles from Metuchen, about 1900. In 1939, there was a reenactment of George Washington's ride into New York for his inauguration. This is the scene of a chicken roast. This annual event was started in the 1890s by Trumbull Marshall, who would get a number of his friends together, and they would go to Bloomfield's Woods and have a roast. The chickens would be wired to the end of a very long forked pole and roasted over the embers of a large fire. When the chickens were done, each person would receive a half chicken. Later, Trumbull Marshall's roast became a large affair, and it was held at either Bloomfield's Woods or the Mine Gully at Menlo Park. One year, Henry Ford and Thomas Edison both attended one of these roasts. About 1908, a younger group held annual roasts at Bloomfield's Woods. This is Mr. Volkmah of Volkmah's Pottery, which was located on Durham Avenue in Metuchen in about 1910. Mr. Volkmah was an artist who came from Paris, France, and located here because of the clay found in this area, which he worked to his pottery. Here are two of his workmen forming a piece of the pottery, and a lady who is finishing the product. These are some examples of the pottery. They're quite beautiful. It's a vase. and what appears to be a stein or a cup. It's another vase of a different shape. He also did some lovely commemorative plates, which are shown here. That's a charming, restful scene. He also did tiles, of which this is an example. This is thought to be one of Mr. Volkmah's paintings. He was an artist. Mr. Volkmah's pottery was sold in New York. This is one of the brochures. Here is Camp Kilmer. These are some of the barracks at the camp. Here are some of the soldiers who passed through Camp Kilmer. This is the entrance to Raritan Arsenal. Here's the administration building. Here's a leading citizen of the area, Mr. Thomas Van Kirk, who was the principal of the high school for 20 years. The auditorium was named for him. Charles Edgar started the clay industry in this area. Major Charles Carman was a local architect. And Lloyd Grimstead, the local photographer and historian to whom we owe a great deal for preserving so many things. Harold Breen, who was the fire chief for many years in Metuchen. Is the new bridge over the Pennsylvania Railroad on Bridge Street. Is the old National Bank building on Main Street in Metuchen. And the new National Bank, also on Main Street. Here's Metuchen Center, where you could get almost everything you ever wanted. And Morris Stores, which is really a landmark in Metuchen. The Edgar Clay Building at Station Place. Commonwealth Bank of Metuchen, where 1,000 birds took refuge in the grillwork, which was soon removed. Metuchen Savings and Loan, probably one of the prettiest banks you'll ever see. Seldow's. Wernick's, now changed since John Wernick is retired, but it's still a pharmacy. The Skank Agency and the Clark Employment Agency. The Skank Agency is still there. Clark Employment now houses Jonathan Mundy, Esquire, attorney at law. The old Acme Market on Highland Avenue, which is no longer there. That's now the location of a little mall. The new Acme Market, which is also no longer there. Food Town, the last outpost where you can get any food in this town. The old A&P, which is now the A&P Liquor Mart. The A&P is located over on Amboy Avenue. The Menlo Park Shopping Mall, if you can believe it. The new mall is absolutely beautiful and really a national treasure, I think, at this point. Roosevelt Park, probably one of the most beautiful parks in the area. Roosevelt Hospital. Redfield Village, which is on Amboy Avenue and very beautifully cared for, has been all these years. This is Durham Avenue facing east past Center Street. Main Street and Middlesex Avenue looking south. Main Street looking south from Hillside Avenue. Main Street and Middlesex Avenue taken from the front of Borough Hall. Despite all the hustle and bustle of a modern-day community, we in Metuchen can still recall a quieter time when we look at the horse trough on Middlesex and Oak Avenue. Every spring, the Garden Club plants beautiful flowers in the trough for us to admire, and also because there are not a lot of horses in the area anymore. An aerial view of Metuchen going up Main Street. One last view up Main Street standing at the railroad station. So you see, Metuchen is a lovely place to visit and an even nicer place to live.